The first problem we're going to deal with is the problem of the sentence fragment. A sentence fragment is defined as an unfinished or incomplete sentence. And there are 4 cases. In each of these cases, we're dealing with a sentence fragment. In case 1, you have a dependent clause standing alone without an independent clause. I don't think I'm going to get a good grade, period, because I didn't study. She got angry and shouted at the teacher, period, which wasn't a very good idea. Right? The because I didn't study and which wasn't a very good idea are dependent clauses standing alone. Case 2 is the missing subject. Jimmy likes to fall asleep on the couch, period. Wakes up at 10, period, then goes to bed. Right? There's no subject in wakes up at 10 and then goes to bed. In those 2 sentences, or in those 2 those 2 fragments, there's no subject there. Obviously, the assumed subject is Jimmy, but as it is, it's an incomplete sentence. Case 3 is the missing verb. People who are stuck in a dead-end job, well, people who are stuck in a dead-end job do what? Or are what? Right? You need that kind of the remaining part of the sentence there. The last thing this country needs, another leader who will only serve the interests of the rich. Obviously, we're missing a verb there too. And the case 4 is the unattached phrase. I work really hard, period. From dawn to dusk, period. My work is not well paid, period. Not at all, period. And you have from dawn to dusk and not at all are just unattached phrases. They're just dangling there. So what are the hacks? The solution, number 1, attach or integrate the unit that cannot stand alone to the unit that can. I work really hard from dawn to dusk, and my work is not at all well paid. I don't think I'm going to get a good grade because I didn't study. And those sentences, from dawn to dusk, not at all, and because I didn't study, are integrated into the unit that can stand alone. Solution 2, make 2 complete sentences. She got angry and shouted at the teacher, period. That wasn't a very good idea. These are 2 complete sentences. Solution 3, add or omit some words. People who are stuck in a dead-end job, well, often find it difficult to change jobs. The last thing this country needs is another leader who will only serve the interests of the rich. Jimmy likes to fall asleep on the couch, period. He wakes up and then goes to bed. Very simple. Now, why do you make this mistake? Well, you make this mistake because there are certain expressions and grammatical structures that trick us into thinking what is really a dependent unit is an independent unit. So let's see what kinds of structures these are. This over here is a relative clause. I always wanted to go to Italy, period, which I finally did last year. This which, right, signals here in this case a kind of extra information clause. Now this extra information clause can't stand alone. It needs to be hooked up to the main clause. I always wanted to go to Italy, comma, which I finally did last year. Second type of structure is a for instance or a for example. When I go camping, I bring several things, period. For instance, food, a tent, and a stove to cook with. That is an incorrect sentence. There's 2 ways to do that. When I go camping, I bring several things, comma, for instance, comma, food, a tent, and a stove to cook with. So you can use that for instance. In English, it's a for instance or for example. It's kind of a ta-ta. So it says, well, I bring several things. What are they? Ta-ta, food, a tent, and a stove to cook with. So you can do it like that. Use 2 commas. Or if you want to start the sentence with a for instance, when I go camping, I bring several things, period. For instance, comma, I bring, subject, verb, I bring food, a tent, and a stove to cook with. Complete sentence. The third kind of structure is a that. Smith claims that people have different ideas about dating, period, that men should always pay. Right? This that cannot just stand alone, rather as a let's say it's a reporting or signals a reporting clause. Smith claims that people have different ideas about dating. Some say that men should pay. Men should always pay. So you have to add the some say. The second type of structure is a clause introduced by a subordinate conjunction needs a main clause to be complete. Because I didn't study, comma, I don't think I'm going to get a good grade. Or, I don't think I'm going to get a good grade because I didn't study. Now, you're going to say, well, the first sentence, can you really start a sentence with because? Our teacher always told us in school that you can't do that. I'm telling you that you can. There's absolutely no reason why you cannot start or why you should not start a sentence with because. I guess the reason why people sort of think that is simply that if you have a because, right, it gives the reason for something. And in the second sentence, I don't think I'm going to get a good grade because I didn't study. The reason is dependent on what went beforehand. Because I didn't study, well, that's the reason for what? I don't think I'm going to get a good grade. So if you're actually thinking about this logically, it would make more sense to say, I don't think I'm going to get a good grade because I didn't study. The reason, you're providing the reason for what went beforehand. However, in the first sentence, when we do this all the time with subordinating conjunctions, we start sentences like that. So, okay, generally, I'm not a fan of doing things like that, but there's absolutely no reason. There's no grammatic or linguistic reason as to why you cannot start a sentence with because. So your pattern to remember is your main clause plus subordinating conjunction plus subordinating clause, or your subordinating conjunction plus subordinate clause plus a comma plus a main clause. And we see that pattern above, those two patterns above. However, we have a bit of a question or an uncertainty. I didn't study, therefore, comma, I don't think I'm going to get a good grade. Why can you start a sentence like that with therefore and not hook it up to what went beforehand? Well, there's a difference in English between a subordinate conjunction and a sentence connecting adverbial. A sentence connecting adverbial can introduce a sentence, and you don't need, for example, in these two cases, you don't need to hook these two sentences up. The therefore, as a sentence connecting adverbial, can introduce that second sentence, and it's a grammatically correct and it's a complete sentence. However, you can't say, I don't think I'm going to get a good grade, period, because I didn't study. These are two different types of words. Students mostly make these kinds of mistakes because they don't recognize or they can't tell the difference between a sentence connecting adverbial and a subordinate conjunction. And this is a mistake that you'll see once again when we deal with the run-on sentences. In run-on sentences, the mistake is actually the opposite. It's thinking that a sentence connecting adverbial is a subordinate conjunction. And in your worksheets that follow, you'll explore the differences between the two. And essentially, it's just a matter of memorizing which is which. Okay, so there should be no problems now with sentence fragments. Thank you.